I call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. The board will now adjourn into executive session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Texas Government Code Section 551.071, private consultation with the board's attorney. 551.072, discussing purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, and 551.074, to discuss personnel or to hear complaints against personnel. The time is 5:30. The board will now reconvene into open session. The time is 6:53. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the trustees, I would like to welcome all of you to this evening's meeting of the Northeast Independent School Board. This is a business meeting of the board held in public. We appreciate your attendance and request your respectful attention. We welcome your comments during matters from the floor section of the agenda. If you signed up to address a specific action agenda item, you will be called at that time. Finally, I would like to remind you that it is the mission of the Northeast Independent School District to challenge and encourage each student to achieve and demonstrate academic excellence, technical skills, and responsible citizenship. And the time is 6:54. Next item.
5, Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. A, Eisenhower Middle School, Principal Cynthia Rubio.
Thank you. President Bresnahan, members of the board, Dr. Gotardi, members of executive staff, and guests, it's my pleasure to introduce two students at Eisenhower Middle School. Both of these students represent the Ike Generals and what we strive for every day from each student. They're involved in multiple areas of the school: National Junior Honor Society, Student Council, PALS, athletics, academics, organizations in and outside of the school. I'd like to highlight a few of Jordan's many accomplishments in and out of the school. National Junior Honor Society president, 8th grade. Straight A student, Student Council president, 5th grade. District track champion, 7th grade. Starter for basketball A team, 7th grade. President's Award, 6th grade. Peer mentor, 4th and 5th grade. Accomplished debater, 7th and 8th grade. Jordan Wolf is here with his parents, Kenneth and Helene, and his younger brother, Gabe.
And would you please stand so we can all recognize you and your family? Thank you.
I'd like to highlight a few of Michaela's many accomplishments, both in and out of school. She's in PALS, Student Council, cheer captain, volunteer at Kennesaw National Park, volleyball team manager, first place winner at Theater Festival. Michaela Chapman Nash is here with her father, Reginald Chapman. At this time, Michaela will lead us with a thought for the evening, and then Jordan will lead us with the Pledge of Allegiance and Texas flag. Would everyone please rise?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michaela Chapman Nash. I am currently an 8th grader at Eisenhower Middle School. At the end of my 6th grade year, I came to Eisenhower from Arizona. Like most kids in this position, I was scared of the change. Eisenhower Middle School was so much bigger than my previous school. Throughout my 2 years I've been in Eisenhower, I've had plenty of wonderful opportunities at my disposal. This is something that I didn't have at my previous school. Both years I've been at Eisenhower, I've had the humbling opportunity of being in several organizations on campus, like Student Council, theater, and being a manager of the Lady Generals volleyball team. My favorite organization by far has been PALS. I enjoy helping others and bettering my school and community. It's a great feeling to know I am a part of that help. By doing so, it has also helped better myself, stay organized, and work on my communication and confidence. Without all of this, I would not be who I am today. Since I've been at Eisenhower, I have excelled academically and become an even better, well-rounded individual. Eisenhower is an amazing school. I am proud to be a general in a and a product of public education. The message I want to leave with you tonight is not to be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid to be different, and always follow your dreams.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
And to Mr. Wolf and Michaela, we've got some certificates, so if you'd like to come up to right in front of the dais. And Mrs. Sandy Wolf, our newest board member, is going to present you with the certificates. And I want to say to both of you, we're glad you're Eisenhower Generals also. And Michaela, you look like a lovely, confident young woman, so I'm sure that will continue. And Mr. Wolf, you as well. So thank you, congratulations, and I'm glad your families were able to be here. And Ms. Rubio, why don't you get in the picture with the kids? That'd be great. Okay. No problem.
He took this picture of him and I back in the 5th grade. I look much younger than
That's way cool.
Mrs. Rubio, thank you for coming and bringing your students. It's such a pleasure. And this is probably a good time to exit, so unless you'd like to stay, you're welcome as well. I kind of,
Thank you.
thank you.
So cute. But that little thing's gonna be just like a big girl.
Next item.
6, recognitions. A, National Healthy Schools Award.
And this is Mr. Clary, and I don't see Mr. Clary. So,
So look who we did.
yes, McLaughlin, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Sure.
I have an excellent group to introduce to you, and it includes several schools. So I'm going to give you a short introduction to the Healthy Schools Award first. In response to the rapid increase in childhood obesity rates over the last 3 decades, the Alliance for a Healthier Generation was founded by the American Heart Association and the Clinton Foundation to serve as a catalyst for improving children's health. In 2006, the Alliance formed the Healthy Schools Program, which has grown to become the nation's most extensive effort to prevent childhood obesity in schools, now reaching nearly 15 million students in more than 25,000 schools in every state and the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico. The Healthy Schools Program has provided a framework for campuses to follow to build a healthier school environment and thereby achieve bronze, silver, or gold level awards. To earn the National Healthy Schools Award, schools must improve their nutrition and wellness services and physical activity programs to meet or exceed stringent standards set by the Alliance. Schools are eligible for bronze, silver, or gold awards based on their level of achievement. This year, 250 schools across the nation are being recognized with the National Healthy Schools Award. The Alliance recognized 4 Northeast ISD schools: Encino Park Elementary, Garner Middle School, Nimitz Middle School, and Churchill High School with the 2014 National Healthy Schools Award. Representatives from each school received this award on September 13th at the Alliance's 2014 Leaders Summit in Washington, D.C. Today, we would like to recognize the Northeast ISD individuals whose efforts earned this prestigious award for the following schools. And so as I call their names, I would love for them to come to the front so that they can be recognized. From Encino Park Elementary, who received the Bronze Award, we have Principal John Hines and teacher Dawn Greenwood. From Garner Middle School, who also received the Bronze Award, we have Principal David Crow, Melinda Ochoa, Paul Melendez, and Kenneth Bridges. From Nimitz Middle School, who also received a Bronze Award, we have Principal Dana Solhansky and Francisco Martinez. And from Churchill High School, who received the Silver Award, which, by the way, Churchill High School is the first high school in the state of Texas to earn this honor, Principal Justin Oxley. And as a last quick introduction, I would like to introduce our nutrition and wellness coordinator who works in the school nutrition department, who helped assist these campuses with applying for the award, and that would be Katie Bowen. And so congratulations to all of you. I know this takes a lot of hard work and a lot of coordination in the entire school and the entire campus. And President Bresnahan is coming to present you with some certificates.
I didn't think about it.
Congratulations, Mr. Oxley. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Mrs. Huey, are we ready? Next item.
B, NISA student recognition.
Mrs. Schumacher? Dr. Newman, sorry.
That's okay. I was going to ask Mrs. Schumacher to come up. Thank you.
Madam President, board members, Dr. Gotardi, executive staff, and guests. As one of 5 individuals who sat around a table in 1996, which certainly dates me, that wasn't my first year either, to bring form to the concept of an arts magnet, little did we realize the success that this program would have and the literally thousands of students that it has impacted over 18 years. And as in any organization in education or outside of education, it all begins with leadership. And I have 3 individuals up here, Miss Dina Mabry and David Connolly, but also Mark Ayers is here. Dina and Mark are co-directors of this program, and we were just talking this evening. When we were beginning to think about staffing this program, and we got to the dance department, we decided the only person who could pull this off was Dina Mabry. And she was working professionally at the time, but we found out that she was an easy prey to begging, so we began begging. And then she began begging Mr. Ayers, who was also working professionally. So 18 years later, with Dina, not only is she still the head of the dance department, but she's one of the co-directors. And with her, who is the architect of the musical theater department, is David Connolly. And he's a working professional also. In fact, at this very moment, he's late to a rehearsal for Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. He's one of the leads in that, which will be opening at the new Tobin Center, Black Box, next month. So the important thing about these people is they are professionals in their own right, but they're great teachers, and they're great inspiration to kids. So I'm going to turn this over to Dina next, and she will take it from there.
Thank you so much. I'm going to tell you a little story. The Hollywood Reporter is a highly respected trade magazine in the entertainment industry. It was established in 1930, and it focuses on theater, television, and film. This past summer, the Hollywood Reporter asked casting agents in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles to create a list of the top 25 universities that produce hireable talent. Next, Hollywood Reporter asked these 25 universities to name the top 10 high schools in the United States that serve as launch pads for teenage talent. We are so thrilled that NISA was number 8 in the top 10 list of high schools in the United States that serve as launch pads for teenage talent. We are so thrilled with this accomplishment, and it frankly just would not have happened without the man who humbly calls himself the acting teacher at NISA, who directs the musicals and the straight plays. David Connolly has created a curriculum that has proven successful year after year in getting students not only accepted into colleges, but also with plenty of scholarship money, or to go on immediately and work professionally in the industry. He also has set a standard and creates an atmosphere in his program that simply breeds success. So I'd like to introduce David Connolly.
Thanks, Dina. I brought our first NISA action figure, fashion doll. This is Grace Phipps from 2010 as Leela in Disney's Teen Beach Movie. Teen Beach Movie 2 will be out next summer, so you might be looking in Target and other stores for Grace's next. And this is Grace. That's Grace singing from the movie. Isn't it wild? Thanks so much for recognizing our kids here tonight. Leonard Bernstein said, "Art never stopped a war and never got anyone a job. That was never its function. Art cannot change events, but it can change people. It can affect people so that they are changed because people are changed by the arts. Enriched, ennobled, encouraged, they then act in a way that may affect the course of events by the way they vote, they behave, and the way they think." And it was a great surprise to receive this notice from the Hollywood Reporter. In fact, if it hadn't been for one of our alumni posting a picture of this top 10 list in Facebook, and one of our MT moms, when I say MT, it's musical theater, it's not like an empty person. One of our MT moms tracked down where this thing came from. Without them, we probably wouldn't even know this had happened now. And if there's one thing I hope you'll take away from our presentation tonight, it's that NISA works. 18 years ago, a specialized magnet arts program was created for the Lee campus. Today, 422 young artists mix into Lee, ISA, and STEM student population there on Jackson Keller. And NISA is an amazing place. I often imagine what it would have been like to spend my high school years in a place like this. I mean, I spent much too much time in my high school in Waldoboro, Maine, way up north, hiding the things I was passionate about, afraid that if other kids found out I would be mocked or bullied, and I can assure you that that was a real fear for me at that time. And if not for my sophomore year English teacher, I don't know where I would be today. He saw something special in me and sent me on my path. And at NISA, the kids find more than just a path, they find their tribe. Every year I hear moving stories from our new freshmen who often describe coming from an isolated and alienated experience to discover at NISA the open arms of kids just like them. At NISA, the word normal is a criticism. There is nothing normal about our kids, God forbid. NISA kids are kooky, original, passionate, eccentric, loud, oddball, and outrageous. Just like James Joyce, Lady Gaga, the Cohen and Marx Brothers, Martha Graham, John Lennon, Billie Holiday, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Charlie Chaplin, Virginia Woolf, Sandra Cisneros, Andy Warhol, Vincent van Gogh, Miles Davis, Igor Stravinsky, James Baldwin, and the Bobs, Dylan, and Fosse, to name a few NISA tribe mates. Among their tribe, their NISA home, our kids find the confidence and the encouragement to be unapologetically who they are. Painters, writers, actors, singers, dancers, designers, filmmakers, composers, musicians, technicians. NISA alumni are building careers in film, television, publishing, popular and classical music, theatrical lighting and sound, producing, filmmaking, Broadway, off-Broadway, regional theater, education. There are 2 NISA musical theater alums teaching at the Taft and MacArthur theater departments. And there's 1 NISA dance alum who's been teaching in the NISA dance department for going on 9 years now. And these alums are working and creating art in New York, Boston, Chicago, Dallas, Los Angeles, Austin, Santa Fe, and of course, San Antonio. And NISA students are talented, but NISA doesn't have a monopoly on talent. Every campus throughout our district has talented students. What NISA students carry along with their talent, though, is determination, tenacity, as Tennessee Williams might have called it. NISA students are willing to leave the security of their traditional home campus, of their established school friends, and shift to a place that will offer them a specialized curriculum, programs of advanced content demanding rigor and discipline, a place where they are constantly challenged by teachers and peers alike. Can you imagine having done that when you left middle school for high school? It's amazing courage. There's an old saying that there's no such thing as bad publicity. Since the near closing of NISA in 2010, our audition numbers have risen every year. In 2010, there were 65 students in the musical theater program, and today there are 102. Since 2009, 122 musical theater majors have graduated and have received scholarship offers during that time totaling more than $15.6 million. And you should know that every MT student graduated in that time. In fact, we've never had a student who did not graduate from high school, and that's what's important. That's really what NISA is all about, providing gifted young artists with a special place to spend their high school careers. We want them to succeed, we want them to achieve, we want them to go to college. We're not here to make kids stars. We're here to help kids make their way into life. The art greases the wheels. Lastly, I want to acknowledge my colleagues who are not here tonight. There are 9 of us, with 2 doubling as our teacher co-directors. Most of us have not only taught at NISA for over 15 years, but we've also created the specialized curriculums that we teach from in creative writing, cinema, dance, instrumental music, musical theater, technical theater, and visual art. If our musical theater majors are making an impression among those schools cited by the Hollywood Reporter, it's because they've been shaped not only by the acting, voice, and dance training, but also by collaboration with all of our other teachers. One of the miracles of NISA is that a group of teachers have collaborated with grace and mutual respect for 16 years, creating together a safe, nurturing, and demanding environment for our students. This has been a rare and wonderful thing. And teaching is hard. Teaching in the public school system in Texas over the past decade has been hard, and that's not news to everybody who's in this room who's been working in public education. There have been a lot of challenges. I often tell people it's amazing that a school like NISA exists in this time, in these days. Dr. Gottardi, the NEISD administration and board, you deserve great admiration and our gratitude for your ongoing commitment to all the specialized programs that NEISD has created for our children. My daughter, Anna, was a summa graduate of Lee from the MT program last year and is now in the BFA acting program at DePaul's Theater School. My son, Aiden, is a sophomore at Lee as a visual art major at NISA. The most crushing blow I felt in 2010 after the news that NISA might close was the thought that my children might not have the chance to attend this school. Thank goodness they have had this opportunity. As a parent, my perception of the NISA student experience was transformed when my daughter joined the MT program, and I saw what the experience was like through the students' eyes. I saw her and the parade of her classmates through my house, transformed by their experience of meeting, learning, growing, playing, and loving each other. This was not my high school experience. The power of NISA is the result of the people who come together there, students and teachers, artists and mentors. So thank you again for recognizing NISA tonight and the accomplishments of our loud, strange, strong-willed young artists. Now I'd like to introduce two of them, musical theater seniors Sarah Sargent and Marcos Ramirez.
Hello, I'm Sarah Sargent, and I'm a senior this year. And I'm a double major at NISA in musical theater and dance, and I just wanted to share an experience with everyone. So November 8th, 2012, it was opening night for Les Miserables, my freshman year. I was so excited, however, I was under tremendous pressure and stress because I had a very important role. I was beggar number 38, and it was my responsibility to bring on the Thénardier's door. I had to find this small hole in the ground and stick the door in the hole. It might sound odd, but this task was giving me horrible anxiety. This is NISA we're talking about. This is the school where the best of the best productions are created, and I could not ruin it by messing up my job. And I'm proud to say that I did it. Lost my spot, sorry. I did it. The door was spectacularly placed. It was a flawless scene change, and I felt so accomplished. When the curtain came up for bows, I was among my fellow beggars, and something very rare happened. All of a sudden, when the curtain rose to reveal the audience, I was engulfed with a feeling of pure joy. It was the most sensational feeling. My breath became deep, my heart was pounding, and I was smiling so hard that the audience most likely thought I was in pain. And I knew at that moment that I wanted to experience this feeling for the rest of my life. NISA has taught me the true meaning of an ensemble. An ensemble is where a large group of people work together to accomplish one goal. Every role, from the actors to the backstage crew, is important. Each member is vital because without beggar number 38, there would have been no entrance into the home of the Thénardiers. I discovered that I was now a part of a family that created art. NISA had trained me in acting, singing, and dancing, and this program gave me a community where I can express myself through performing. In addition to instilling the value of an ensemble, NISA has helped me to discover my individuality. I'm proud to be the person that I have become at NISA. Being your weird artistic self is highly encouraged, as Mr. Connolly mentioned. And throughout the past 3 years, I've gained confidence in myself as a performer and an overall person. This confidence has pushed me to pursue theater as a career. And it's my senior year, and when I reflect on my days at NISA, I could not imagine attending any other school. NISA has truly impacted my life and myself as a performer. Thank you so much to the superintendent and the board of NEISD for all that you do, and we're just so blessed to still be going strong. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Marcos Ramirez, and I'm a senior musical theater major at the Northeast School of the Arts at Robert E. Lee High School. For the past 4 years of my life, NISA has been this huge driving force for my own growth and success, both artistically and academically. When you first come to NISA, you don't really know what to expect. Once you're here, however, you suddenly find yourself in this amazing world where your interests and passions in the art are taken as seriously as math or English or science. This has been a life-changing notion that has influenced my development over the years. And as someone who has been at NISA since their freshman year, I think I've started to take that for granted. The environment and culture of NISA has been so routine for us over the years that we start to lose sight of just how lucky we are. As I reflect back on it, however, the NISA community, this includes both the faculty and the student body, has been molding me to be the best that I can possibly be and then to constantly strive for more. NISA is a family that loves you and supports you and encourages you. It gives you new ideas to reevaluate who you are and the tools to attack a new opportunity head on. The training and education at NISA have been invaluable and unquestionably exceptional. This is not to praise NISA above Lee High School, just the opposite. I love Lee. I go to Lee football games and Lee theater productions, and I go to NISA orchestra concerts and NISA art showcases. And I would not be the same person without the academics and teachers of Robert E. Lee High School. I am a National Hispanic Scholar and a National Merit semifinalist because of Lee and also because of NISA. NISA students have to balance rehearsals and art requirements as well as good grades, and so we are hardworking and focused in everything we do. In fact, I am only one of the 12 NISA students being nationally recognized as scholars this year, which contributes to Lee's largest body of national scholars yet. Other NISA students are similarly invested in the Lee High School experience. For example, the valedictorians of the past couple years have been mostly NISA girls. And in addition, this year, all the National Honor Society officers are NISA seniors. Last year, NISA students made up a majority of the NHS officers. NISA students have incredible passion and drive in academics and leadership positions as well as the arts because NISA is a program that encourages hard work and determination. I would like to end by thanking the superintendent and the NEISD board for recognizing NISA tonight and by taking a personal moment to reflect on what NISA has been teaching me. 4 years of acting, voice, and dance classes have effectively prepared me for my upcoming college auditions. But almost more importantly, NISA has taught me to be hardworking, disciplined, and ambitious in everything I do. I am so incredibly lucky to be going to NISA. It has molded me into the college-bound student I am today. Thank you.
So thanks to all of you for giving us this opportunity to recognize this fantastic program. And you're all invited to Anything Goes, which opens November 6th.
Mrs. Schumacher, it's our turn to thank you. You've been a remarkable executive director, and we cannot do this without you, so thank you to you. Thank you to Mrs. Mabry and Mr. Connolly. And Mr. Connolly, you're a real testament to the power and the influence of a really good teacher, and I know you're paying that forward to your students. And to the students, if I could ask them one quick question. So come up to the microphone. So Sarah, where are you planning to go to school? Or do you have, I'm sure you have plans.
I have, I've been applying
Yes.
rapidly, very rapidly.
Sure,
and
good.
Two of my top schools right now are Pace University in New York
Yeah.
and University of Michigan. Those are
Wonderful. Tops.
my top schools right now.
Well, wonderful, and you're just precious, and we're glad that you are a Lee student as well.
Yes.
So, and pass it on. You're getting ready for a big, exciting life, so pass it on and take pride in your school and let everybody know what a great experience you've had.
Definitely.
And we would really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And Marcus, what about you?
My current top two schools are Northwestern University and then DePaul University, where Anna goes to.
And did you walk were you at the football game?
Yes, I was. I
So
watched
Dr. Gotardi gave you,
Yeah.
yeah, well, we were up there watching you,
Oh, thank you.
clapping. And so you both are supporting your Lee High School football team because they're having a sensational year.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun. Well, we're so proud of both of you, and we're so glad you're our students, and you will represent us really well. Oh, yes, please do.
This is my mother, Deborah Sargent.
Yeah.
And that's my father, Gilbert Ramirez.
And Mr. Ayers, would you like to take so we can clap for you as well? And I believe Dr. Gotardi has some certificates for the gang. So if you want to come here in front of the dais, congratulations again. Oh, yeah, Mr. Canales, please, yes. Oh, I don't see any. Next item, Mrs. Huey, thank you.
C, other.
And we have none. There
Good,
are
'cause
not
that would
any
be a hard-
scouts.
That would be hard to follow.
Yeah, to follow. Okay, next item, please.
7, matters from executive session. A, personnel, including but not limited to administrative appointments pursuant to Government Code Section 551.074. 1, possible action regarding routine personnel, including but not limited to administrative appointments.
Do I have a motion on routine personnel as presented? This one has action? Oh, no, this is no action. The next one has action. Go ahead. Thank you.
Ready?
Yes.
2, possible action regarding proposed recommendation for termination of Chapter 21 term contract employee.
Okay, do I have a motion regarding the approval of proposed termination of the identified employee's Chapter 21 term contract discussed in executive session, and notify the employee of the proposed action to include the grounds of the action?
So move.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. White. There can be no discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Next item.
3, introductions.
Dr. Gotardi?
Madam President, we have no introductions this evening. Thank you.
Sir. Next item.
B, possible action on the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property pursuant to Government Code Section 551.072.
No action.
C, possible action regarding consultation with board's attorney pursuant to Government Code Section 551.071. 1, possible and pending litigation.
No action.
8, presentations. A, stadium concessions report.
This is Dr. Newman.
President Bresnahan, members of the board, Dr. Gotardi, executive staff. The purpose of this presentation this evening is to briefly summarize the information that we gathered regarding stadium concessions and their operations. Earlier, you were provided with the binder that contained detailed information regarding concession sales at our 2 stadiums. I'm going to ask that Mr. Mark Chambers, our Senior Director for Fine Arts, present a summary of that information to you at this time. In the audience, we also have Diana Schumacher, Executive Director, Karen Funk, Director of Athletics, and Mr. Kiekhofer, Treasurer of the Northeast Band Parent Association. Mr. Chambers?
Thank you, Dr. Newman. I just commented to Mr. Kiekhofer, I hate following the NISA students. I'm not going to be quite as dynamic. Tonight I have a short presentation that provides general highlights of the Northeast concession operations. And as Dr. Newman mentioned, you have been provided a detailed report that provides specifics to many of the items I will cover in the presentation. We'll start with the structure of the organization, and you can see on the screen, at the very top we have the Northeast Band Parents Association Board. This board consists of the presidents from each of our high school band parents associations. So each high school has an organization, band parents organization. They have presidents, and those presidents make up that board. I also sit on that board as a district representative. And the board meets once a month, usually the 3rd Wednesday of each month, to discuss all items that are related to concessions. It's a monthly review of the operations, the finances, the issues, menu, changes in services, etc. Underneath the board, we have a concessions manager who is a paid employee, and I'll go more into that in detail in a moment. And also, he has a concessions assistant, also a paid employee. The Northeast Band Parent Association hires, manages, and evaluates those employees. Underneath all of those are the 7 concession chairs, and usually the concession chair is one of the vice presidents from the individual Band Parents Association, and their job as vice president is to be a concession chair. The concession chairs are responsible for each school's concession operation, and that includes recruiting, organizing, assigning, and training volunteer workers. The Northeast Band Parent Association operates under a set of bylaws. They've been provided in the report that you have under tab 1, NEBPA bylaws. Under the leadership of this board, the concession operations has developed over the years into a highly organized business model. And the members of the board come from a variety of industries and backgrounds, and we're fortunate to have them support our programs and our district by giving their time and their expertise to the development of this operation. Next, we have our facilities. The facilities include BAC, which includes Comalander Stadium, Littleton Gymnasium, Josh Davis Natatorium, the East and West soccer fields, the baseball fields, also Heroes Stadium, and then the NEISD softball complex on Judson Road, as well as the NEISD softball baseball complex on Bassey Road. It does not include campus facilities. And next you see the concession events. I won't read all of them to you, but they range from varsity football games all the way down to track, so it's quite a few sports. The revenue distribution is as follows. 12.5% of all gross proceeds are distributed directly to NEISD Athletic Department. There's one distribution in the fall and one distribution in the spring. The net revenue from sales at these events is distributed to each school's Band Parents Association twice a year, again, once in the fall and once in the spring. And I want to note that each group is required to provide their Form 990 once a year before they can receive their distribution checks. And that's to ensure that all the schools' BPAs have a current 501c3 status. And all of our groups have 501c3 status and are current. All schools' Band Parents organizations share evenly in the net proceeds from concession sales of all events, with the exception of varsity and playoff football games. Net proceeds from those games go directly to the school BPA that worked event. And of course, usually the Band Parent Association that works the event, they work their own football game. Occasionally, we'll have a conflict and another group will work it, but for football and playoff football games, those groups work their own games. There'll be one exception that I'll talk about in a minute. Expenses. Collectively, the Northeast Band Parents Association purchases all food and supplies necessary to operate concessions at each facility. The NEBPA pays the salary for 2 employees. The NEBPA is not responsible for the purchase of food preparation equipment, which for the most part is purchased by NEISD. So that means the Northeast Band Parents they'll buy containers, utensils, tongs, spoons, and even some small appliances such as microwaves. But the big stuff like a refrigerator, the popcorn machines, things of that nature are all provided by the district and belong to the district. Expenses for food and supplies are deducted from the proceeds of sales. Staffing. The staffing for concession varies by event. A large varsity football game will have as many as 60 volunteers, which at Comalander Stadium is 15 per stand with 4 stands. And sometimes we'll have even more because you've probably seen the satellite stands on a really big game where we'll sell water and other items. Sometimes we'll have a few more than 60. On the other side, baseball games at Bassey Field can be done with as little as 2 people. Concession volunteers are required to arrive 1 to 2 hours prior to the start of event. And the arrival times vary depending on the event. So an example would be at a football game, we're required to open the sessions 1 hour before the game starts, and the volunteers are required to be there an hour before that. So they're 2 hours before, they work the game, and then after the game, usually it's about an hour for cleanup and restoring the concession stand so it's ready to go. A detail of all the staffing recommendations for every event that we service is in the book that you've been provided. It's under tab 1. It's on the last page of basics if you want to look at that. A detailed calendar is created to ensure that schools work a fair share of events throughout the year. Detail of that is in your report under tab 3, events, individual school schedules. And what you'll see on that is the band parents have put together a point system that they assign to an event. So a heavy worker event like a football game will receive more points than, say, a lighter event. And what they do is once they've assigned the events, they look at those points to make sure that every school is pretty much close across the board so that everybody is getting the same opportunity and also, doing the same amount of work. Some facts are in 2013 and 14, the NEBPA equally distributed 325 concession assignments to the 7 high school band parents associations. Many of the concession assignments cover multiple athletic and/or other events. So an example is Churchill High School maybe receive a volleyball assignment, but within that assignment may be 3 different volleyball games. So as a result, the collective schools of the NEBPA staffed 630 athletic, you could say, games or other events in 2013-14. So you can see how large and the number of events that they're working. Under operations, the board employs 2 individuals to coordinate all concession activities, and those individuals have duties and responsibilities that include purchasing, inventory assessment, which you have in your detail under tab 4, operations, inventory control, football concession deposits, starting cash, menu updates. You remember when we added Right Bites, doing those sorts of things. They're always looking at the menu and reassessing it every year. Training of the volunteers, maintaining the equipment, keeping up with our food permits, which are current, and they're also in your detail under appendix tab 5. And also inspections. We're inspected sometimes several times a year. Those are also, the latest were on August 5th at both stadiums. Those are provided in the detail tab 5 appendix as well. In summary, I'd like to close by saying that we are fortunate to have dedicated individuals who volunteer their time and energy as they support our district by operating a comprehensive concessions operation. As you are aware, NEISD is exceptional in the fine arts, and through theater, visual art, dance, and music, our students continue to perform among the best in their craft and their academics. The concessions operation is vital to our band programs as they consistently work to be among the best in the state and the nation. Over many years, the Northeast Band Parents Association has diligently worked to develop a highly organized business model that is efficient and dedicated to providing quality concessions for all of our customers. All of this is possible because of the support of this board and administration and your continued vision of a 360 education for all Northeast students. I'll now turn it back over to Dr. Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers. Customer service was a large consideration as we examined the concession operation. All agreed that it is a very labor-intensive endeavor. And as Mr. Chambers explained, the number of hours involved in the scheduling, training, and the working of these events is extensive. Maintaining the effectiveness and efficiency of the concessions is best served by the business model that's in place. Our high school principals do ensure that numerous campus organizations are afforded fundraising opportunities at the campus level. The following changes will be suggested. A recommendation will be presented to executive staff that administrative regulation, CDG, be changed to specify Hero Stadium, Blossom Athletic Complex, NEISD Softball Complex, and the Robert E. Lee Baseball Softball Complex. Right now, it just says all concessions. And we will also recommend that the Northeast Band Parent Association change their verbiage to reflect the same. A list of fundraising ideas will be generated and communicated to sponsors and instructors of organizations that don't typically have the opportunity to host events at their campus, which would result in concession opportunities. We will continue evaluating how to best serve NEISD's patrons at our stadiums, and we do feel that the business model our Northeast Band Parent Association has established best serves NEISD stadium concessions. Are there any questions by the board?
Any questions for Dr. Newman? Okay, thank you. Well, he was going to, but- Okay, Mr. White, no question? Okay. Thank you very much. This is a
President, may I say a few?
Of course.
I just want to thank Mr. Chambers, Ms. Schumacher, Dr. Newman, and the many people who worked on this research and put this presentation together. I have to tell you, it is an extensive bit of work that goes into Obviously, the operations at a football game or a volleyball game, obviously track meet, big time. But the idea that concession stands are very important at our campuses, and they're very important for different activities that are going on at the schools. So I just want to commend them for their research and commend them for the hard work. I have to tell you, many of you go to a football game every Friday and Saturday night, and if you wander by the concession area, you know how hard the band booster parents are working. They not only work hard on the field for halftime, but they work extremely hard in the concession stand area. So thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mark.
Thank you. And Dr. Newman, I appreciate what you said, your last statement about looking for fundraising opportunities for all of our groups. And we appreciate that because we want them all to do well.
Absolutely.
And we know this
Mrs.
is a
President.
complicated business here.
Thank you.
So there's no action on this item as it is a presentation. Next item.
9, comments from individual board members. A, 2014 TASB Convention.
Thank you, Mrs. Huey. Do we have any comments, any observations that any of you would like to share with all of us
I want to hear.
on the convention? Well, Mr. Wheat, thank you for being the delegate. I sat in as an alternate, and it was a lot more complicated than I expected. So thank you for doing that. And Mrs. Huey, thank you for heading up the legislative committee, and that was also a big job, and we really appreciate all of your work and input. And I thought overall it was an excellent conference. I enjoyed it.
I thought they did a really great job. I really appreciated the different classes they had this time. There was some very unusual, I mean, it's nice to see some big changes there on the classes.
Mhm.
So,
Anyone else?
worked hard.
Thank you. And there's no action on this item either, so we'll go to the next item.
10, new business for possible board action. A, board policy. 1, possible action regarding board policy FDB local, second reading.
Dr. Newman?
President Bresnahan, members of the board, Dr. Gotardi, executive staff, we are asking that the Board of Trustees approve the second reading of board policy FDB local as presented.
Do we have any questions for Dr. Newman? Okay,
I
see.
move that we accept it as presented.
Thank you, Mr. White. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Wolf. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any additional discussion? Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Thank you. Next item.
2, possible action regarding board policy FDA local, second reading.
Dr. Newman?
Again, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the second reading of board policy FDA local as presented. I would like to add a little note that we have requested FDA be an exception from the Update 100, which is your next agenda item.
Questions for Dr. Newman? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve second reading of board policy FDA local?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Perkins. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Grona. Any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Next item.
3, possible action regarding board policy update 100, first reading.
Dr. Gotardi.
Thank you, Madam President, board members, ladies and gentlemen. We bring to you this evening Update 100. As Dr. Newman has already mentioned, we want for you to approve first reading of Update 100 with the exception of 2 policies, that being FDA, we've already approved, as well as CKE. We have staff here to answer any questions you might have about Update 100. You're free to send us questions about Update 100, but if not, we will bring back at the next regular board meeting the second reading. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions for Dr. Gotardi?
Just a quick question. Is this the one that's covering the safety in the school police especially?
CKE is on our safety program, risk management, security personnel. Yes, sir.
Okay. That includes use of force and what the police department authority is in that area?
You know, I'm going to ask Mr. Clary or Mr. Villarreal to get into the specifics of this particular board policy.
Chief McCampbell is here to address any questions on that issue.
Okay. It'll be just real brief.
Since you're here.
I am glad you were here. It was something that had come up before. It's certainly something that I think a lot of people have seen based on the Incarnate Word incident that happened a little while back on sort of the authority that we want to give police officers on how far they're going to go off campus and what they're going to do. And I'm sure you're familiar with at least having seen that in the paper, right?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay. It looks like that would be covered by the police department manual. Is that the way it would be covered?
That's correct. And what I've done is I've compared the proposal from TASB, and it's changed the old policy, and it's basically created its own individual topics as far as the use of force, racial profiling, in certain incidents like that. As at the present time, the school board's attorney is presently reviewing a policy manual that I presented him that I would like to implement within the police department that would cover all these issues in the policy. That's the reason why, for the delay, presented to the board today.
Okay, okay. But that would all be covered under the manual, one that'd be going over by the attorney?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wheat. Any additional questions? Thank you, Chief McCampbell.
Thank you.
A lot of work. Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the first reading of attached local policies and update 100 with the exception of the board policies CKE and FDA local.
Thank you, Mrs. Groen. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Perkins. Additional questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it. Next item.
4, possible action regarding board policy DNA local, first reading.
Dr. Newman.
President Bresnahan, members of the board, Dr. Gotardi, executive staff, we ask that the Board of Trustees approve the first reading of attached board policy DNA local as submitted. Mr. Joel Trevino, our Executive Director of Human Resources, is available should you have any questions on this.
Thank you, Dr. Newman. Do we have any questions for Mr. Trevino? Okay. Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I move that we approve first reading of attached board policy DNA local.
Thank you, Mrs. Perkins. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. White. Any questions? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Next item.
5, possible action regarding board policy FL local, first reading.
Mr. Clary?
Madam President, Dr. Gotardi, members of executive staff and guests, this is the first reading for FL Local, and we are requesting to update the policy that will restrict student directory information to those that have no affiliation with the district.
Thank you, Mr. Clary. Do we have any questions for Mr. Clary? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I so move.
Thank you, Mrs. Wolf. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Grona. Any additional questions, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. Next item.
B, resolutions. 1, possible action regarding National School Bus Safety Week.
Mr. Clary. We're moving fast.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Gotardi, executive staff and guests, Mr. Nolan Anderson, our Executive Director, Transportation, will come to the podium to make this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Clary.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
President Bresnahan, members of the board, Dr. Gotardi, executive staff, and guests, good evening again. It is always a pleasure and an honor to present our annual resolution for the National School Bus Safety Week. But if you would, look in your package. There's a little token of appreciation from the Transportation Department for your support.
There you go, man.
And reflecting on the first page, on the cover, there's a little theme that our trainers came up with this year that is very related to our resolution this evening. And the theme reads, "Preparing today for student safety tomorrow." With that, I would like to present the resolution to you. Northeast Independent School District Board of Trustees, October 13, 2014. Whereas each year, some 480,000 public school buses in the United States travel more than 4.3 billion miles to transport approximately 25 million students to and from school and to school-sponsored activities, totaling a remarkable 10 billion passenger trips annually. Whereas dedicated, skilled school bus drivers are responsible for making school bus transportation the safest form of surface transportation. Whereas the Northeast Independent School District is committed to providing safe, reliable, courteous, and efficient school bus services to its students. Now, therefore, be resolved that we, the Northeast Independent School District Board of Trustees, do hereby proclaim National School Bus Safety Week, October 20th through the 24th, 2014, and urge all students, teachers, and staff to take an active interest in the promotion of school bus safety activities, training to help ensure school bus transportation of our students to and from school and on all activity trips. Be it further resolved, a copy of this resolution is placed in the meeting minutes of the Northeast Independent School District Board of Trustees, passed and approved and adopted by the Northeast Independent School District Board of Trustees on this 13th day of October 2014. I respectfully submit this resolution.
I so move.
Well, thank you. Well, that was quick. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Wolf, thank you. Do we have any remarks for Mr. Anderson? Sure, go ahead.
I wanted to thank you, first of all, for the quick response at the beginning of the year when there was the issue with an overcrowded bus. I know the first part of the year is such a challenge, and so thank you for that. But more recently, I was riding with someone who noticed we passed, or a string of our buses passed us as we were going somewhere, going through the intersection. And they said, "Oh, look at all the new buses." And I looked at them and said, "Nope, those aren't new. We just take care of them." And they were really, I mean, because it was different styles, and I knew that some of the buses were older by the styles and stuff. They just look great. So thank you for taking care of not only our children, but the buses that so safely transport them. So thank you.
Thank you, and we have a great staff, and they're dedicated. And to reflect a little bit further, this is our 4th year experiencing a driver shortage. And right now, we are 21 down in covering permanent routes with a driver. However, we have a dedicated staff, and there has not been one single day over the last 4 years we have not been able to cover a route. And plus, on top of that, they take care of the buses as well.
Yes, they do. I think Ms. Grono wanted.
No.
wanted to ride.
I am not volunteering to drive a bus.
Mr. Anderson, you would
Yes,
not
sir.
want her driving. With all due respect, boss.
Hey, I drive very safe.
She
Just
drives
a little fast.
safely, but she makes it in record time.
Thank you. And
Mr.
again,
Anderson, thank you so much for what you do.
And thank you for your
yes, 10
support.
10 billion passenger trips is I can't count that high.
It's a
You're
lot
a
of-
busy group.
Yes, overall, nationally wise, we are pretty busy.
Really incredible, and I just
Yes.
used to love to put my kids on the bus.
Well, thank you very much.
I was happy, so thank you very much, and it looks like we've already got a motion and a second, so all those in favor, if we have nothing else to discuss?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next item,
2, possible action regarding National School Lunch Week.
Mr. Clary.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Gotardi and guests, she's already beat me to the podium, but Ms. Glosson is ready to present this resolution.
Ms. Glosson.
Thank you. Good evening. It's always hard to follow Mr. Anderson. Such a wonderful department, but I'm going to try my best. As you may be aware, this week that we're currently in is National School Lunch Week, but due to some conflicting events in the district, we are asking that the following week, October 20th through the 24th, be declared School Lunch Week in Northeast ISD so that we can continue the wonderful events that we do where we have many of you come and serve meals to the students. We're looking forward to that and hoping that you're going to sign up to come. This year we're also having a focus on local products, trying to source some local apples from West Texas as well as some local squash to feed to the students during the week so that we can emphasize Texas produce as well. So there'll be some new events as well as some old favorites, but we're recommending that Northeast actually celebrate School Lunch Week the week of October 20th through the 24th.
I think that sounds very reasonable. What do you think? That's a fun event to do, but it's exhausting. Did it for 20 minutes. I was so tired. It was terrible. And the hairnets and
That's awesome.
And the kids were really coming by quickly.
So
Okay.
this year we'll have it at Royal Ridge Elementary and Thousand Oaks
Great.
Elementary.
Well, we're looking forward to it.
Great.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve October the 20th through the 24th, 2014 as School Lunch Week.
Thank you, Mrs. Perkins. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Grona. Additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Thank you. Next item. Thank you.
3, possible action regarding resolution indicative of the Board of Trustees' annual review of investment program.
Mr. Villarreal.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Gottardi, executive staff, and guest. Brian Moy, our the Senior Director of Budgets and Financial Services, and Ms. Shanna Torberg, our Treasurer, are going to give a small little presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Moy.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Gottardi, executive staff, and guests. While Shanna's getting set up, I'll go ahead and do a brief introduction. This is in the resolution section of the board agenda, but it's not nearly as fun as School Bus Safety Week or National School Lunch Week. But unfortunately, the Public Funds Investment Act actually requires a written instrument, quote unquote, such as a resolution, stating that that you have approved the investment program and the investment policies that are in place. So that's one of the things that we're here for. Later on in the agenda are 2, we'll just call them housekeeping items that also have to be done annually according to the Public Funds Investment Act. One is just to simply recertify the list of brokers and dealers who comply with our policies that we are allowed to do business with, and a list of entities which are certified to perform investment officer training and to allow us, when training comes, our time comes due to do training, that we are allowed to pick from that list of vendors. All right. You should have received an annual investment report last week. It looks much like the quarterly investment reports that you get, with a little executive summary in front, and a little bit fatter than the quarterlies. And by the way, I want to first thank Ms. Grona for catching the typo in the September quarterly investment report. You should have by now received the corrected version, and Shanna and I are very impressed that you actually read it in that much detail to catch that mistake.
You do know I was a compliance officer and auditor, right? In my prior life.
She drives fast and she catches all those mistakes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Now I'm a little more nervous. Thank you. Okay, moving on. The investment function, as I mentioned, is governed by the what's called the Texas Public Funds Investment Act. It is Texas Government Code, Section 2256. It's also governed by our local and legal policies. So the components of the PFIA are presented there in the different bubbles. It includes things such as, what we can and cannot invest in, mostly what we cannot. There's not a lot that we can invest in. It also has just all the different definitions of the terminology that are part of the Act. It defines what our policies must include. It defines what a standard of care is for our practice, our investment practice, and defines what investment officers must do and must have, what training they must have. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Shanna Toborg, our district treasurer. She's going to go through the next few slides.
Good evening. Thank you, Brian. Okay, as Brian has mentioned, we are regulated by the Public Funds Investment Act, and it requires that we adopt an investment policy. And that policy must be written, and it primarily emphasizes safety of principal and liquidity, and it must address investment diversification, yield, and maturity, as well as the quality and capability of investment management. It should also include those authorized investments that we are allowed to invest in, and those consist of governmental or agency bonds, where like the Fannie Mae's, Federal Home Loan Bank, Freddie Mac, and investments of that sort. It also includes municipal bonds, much like we issue here at Northeast ISD, commercial paper, certificates of deposit, and our local government investment pools. The policy must also state the maximum allowable stated maturity for any investment that we have. And we also must have methods to monitor market price and ratings in place. And currently, our third-party safekeeping bank does provide a monthly report for us so we can monitor any ratings, and we have not had any downturn in ratings. So everything that we invest in has been totally safe. And we also must utilize the delivery versus payment method. And what this means is that when an investment is purchased, no funds leave the district account until that security is received by our third-party safekeeping bank. Just an extra level of insurance there. And then the board must also review policy and strategies annually, as well as on a quarterly basis. We must practice the standard of care, which, defined by the Act, means that all investments are made with judgment and care under prevailing circumstances that a person of prudence, discretion, and intelligence would exercise in the management of that person's own affairs. The Board of Trustees also designates one or more investment officers, and here at Northeast ISD we currently have 4, and that's our CFO, our Senior Director of Budgets, the Treasurer, myself, and our Treasury Accountant. And we must attend PFIA training within the first 2 years of taking office or assuming duties. We must get 10 hours, and then every 2 years thereafter we have to continue our continuing education on an ongoing basis. And lastly, we have internal controls that have been put in place to help safeguard our assets. And these controls are reviewed by both internal and external auditors. And here's a snapshot of a graph or chart that you are probably accustomed to seeing in the quarterly report. I've listed what's required by PFIA, and this chart is basically saying, yes, we are compliant in those areas. We do purchase securities that are authorized by the Investment Act. We do keep broker-dealer certifications on file. We do all currently have current training hours and so on. On this screen, we monitor the credit ratings and we provide the management reports. And here we're showing the diversification of our portfolio. We have broken it down into 4 main categories: our general fund, debt service fund, capital projects funds, and all other. And all other encompasses our food service, health insurance, dental, and workers' comp funds. This is just a snapshot of what the balances were at June 30. As you can see, on average, we like to keep about 50% in the local government investment pools to ensure that we have sufficient liquidity to cover any cash disbursements that need to be made. And then the rest, we try to diversify and split up into the various authorized investment vehicles. And it so happens at June 30, if you notice, we have quite a large amount in the investment pools. When I said we like to keep an average of 50%, what was going on here was we were anticipating the August 1st debt service payment, so maturities were starting to come in for that payment. As mentioned, this is just a snapshot at June 30, as our cash receipts come in at different times of the year. As you can see, it starts to peak or just increase during the months of August, September, and October, and these are state payments from TEA. We received 20% in August, 45% in September, and 35% of those funds in October. And then peak flows for December through February, those are the property tax collections, which I get excited about every day. We get a fax with those reports, and I like to see big dollars come through. And then our cash forecast is updated daily as we perform our daily cash management transactions. We have a moving forecast. That way we can maximize our investment earnings. And then this graph is showing the trend in our cash disbursements throughout the year. In December, there starts to be a push in our accounts payable department to get invoices paid before the end of the calendar year and before we leave on the winter break. As well in January, they're kind of playing catch up from when we were out on winter break. As well as also in January, there are 3 biweekly payrolls that go out, so that kind of tends to increase the disbursements, or it did for the fiscal year 13-14 anyway. And then in May and June, it starts to rise a bit again due to the getting invoices paid before the end of the fiscal year, as well as our retention supplement getting paid in the June paycheck.
If I can jump in here for a second, this, if you flip back to look at the receipts chart, and then now move forward again to the disbursements chart, see just how different the flows are. This is why, even though we're talking about the investments and how much, what can we invest in and how much, just how important building the plan for proper liquidity is and our daily cash management, because the receipts and the disbursements do not match each other at all. So, there's going to be times when you may see the second quarter investment report ending December 31, where if a lot of the receipts come in prior to us leaving for winter break, you'll see a much larger percentage invested, because then we're sitting on funds that won't be needed till later in the year. But then we constantly have to forecast the cash and set out the maturity dates to ensure that we have proper cash available in the bank when all of these different checks clear throughout the year.
Okay, and now we'll move on to a little bit about the performance of the portfolio. Compared to this graph is showing a comparison to the investment pools, and it shows we did relatively well. The investment pools for the fiscal year averaged 0.06, while our total district portfolio earned 0.24, which is about an 18 basis point difference. So I think we did well by not letting all of our funds sit in those local government investment pools and getting out there and trying to maximize the earnings. And this was just due to active management of the portfolio and keeping on top of our cash forecast and utilizing those dollars. And then here's a graph of our investment earnings for the last 3 fiscal years. Earnings have trended about the same for all funds except capital projects. You can see there's a spike in fiscal year 11 and 12, where the investment proceeds from the 2007 bond funds were yielding much, 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 much higher, more around the 5%, 5.25%. So I just mentioned now the Fed fund, or I haven't mentioned, but the Fed funds right now is that it ranges from 0 to 0.25, so that's quite a jump there. But anyway, those investments from the 2007 bond were maturing into the investment pools. And then earnings in the 13-14 capital projects fiscal year have also started to rise again. Those are due to the remaining $200 million of the 2011 bond issuance. We've just had more money available to invest. Unfortunately, it's not at that 5% back in 2007, but the average yield of investments that we goes at like a 0.60. That just depends on where the treasury curve is at that point in time, but on average, that's kind of what, if you go out 2 years, that's kind of where those funds were sitting on the treasury yield curve, which Brian will talk a little bit more about now.
Okay, thank you. This is showing what U.S. Treasuries sat at for different maturities as of, I believe that's Thursday of last week. And believe it or not, this is called a normal yield curve, just because of its shape, lower in the early years and then it consistently becoming higher in the out years, but in terms of 0.01, 0.01, 0.05, we don't want that to be normal. And as you can see, like Shannon mentioned, one way of saying it is, yes, we had our portfolio outperformed the investment pools. We quadrupled the rate. That's the good news. The bad news is it was only up to a 0.24%. But as you can see here, there is simply still really nothing to invest in. You have to go out more than 2 years just to get to a 0.5%. The flip side of this, however, is that as you've heard in a couple of different presentations in the last 12 months, is how we actively manage the debt. We are taking advantage of this yield curve on the debt management side. So while we are not bringing in a lot of investment earnings and have additional funds to spend there, we are saving the taxpayers a lot of money by not having a higher INS tax rate, because we are constantly managing, trying to refund higher old debt and utilizing that really flat first part of the yield curve by issuing a lot of short-term debt laddered, and we're going to be consistently flipping those short-term debts as long as the short-term rates stay low. So it's a trade-off there, and so right now the good side is the debt side.
Okay, and here we just have a snapshot of what our purchases and maturities of investments have looked like for the last 2 fiscal years. And basically, you can just see that because of the remaining portion of that 2011 authorization, we were able to make more purchases in fiscal year 13-14 than in the prior year, and maturities have remained about the same. And moving forward, we're just going to continue to constantly monitor the economic data for signs of any rising yields. We're going to continue to position our portfolio and take advantage of the higher yields when and if they occur. We're going to maintain all of our safety measures and continue to refine our cash forecasting to ensure maximum funds are available to invest. And with that, we're available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Toberg. Do we have questions for either one? Good presentation and good explanations.
Thank you.
So you anticipated most of our questions and answered before we could ask. That's
Great.
good.
Good, thank you.
Yeah. Do I have a motion? Anyone?
I move that we approve the resolution to review that's the review of the district's investment program.
Thank you, Mrs. Huey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. White. Additional discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Next item.
C, instruction. 1, possible action regarding request for exception to the bilingual program.
Yes, and this is Mrs. Hawkins.
Thank you, President Brejnahan, board members, and Dr. Gotardi. I would like Terry Chigi, our Executive Director for School Improvement, to come to the podium for this item.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Gotardi, executive staff, and guests. Every year, the ELL department comes to you to request an exception to the bilingual program, as specified in Chapter 89. Each school district that has an enrollment of 20 or more English language learners in any language classification in the same grade level district-wide shall offer a bilingual education program for the English language learners in pre-kindergarten through the elementary grades who speak that language. A school district that is unable to provide a bilingual program shall request from the Commissioner of Education an exception to the bilingual education program. Northeast ISD currently meets the criteria to offer an English-Vietnamese bilingual program. The district will be submitting a request for an exception to the bilingual program by November 1st of this year. It is recommended that the request for an exception to the bilingual program be approved as submitted. And I have Elisa Alvarez Calderon here to answer any questions that you might have. She is the director for ELL programs.
Thank you, Mrs. Chidgey. Do we have questions?
I have a quick question.
Mrs. Wolf?
What help can they get? Yeah. What help can the Vietnamese kids get?
There is an ESL teacher. They are placed in an ESL certified teachers class who practices PSYOP instruction, sheltered instruction, and I'll get Alicia up here to answer better than I'm doing, but that helps with vocabulary, helps to scaffold the instruction. So Alicia, do you want to answer that more fully?
Good evening. Currently, those students are placed in ESL classrooms as opposed to bilingual classrooms.
Right.
So what that means is English as a second language, as instruction is delivered all in English as opposed to their native language. We don't have Vietnamese bilingual teachers certified, and that's the problem that we have. And with the 20 students, it's 20 students in the whole district. So we have numbers of, maybe 24, 25 at each grade level, but they're all scattered throughout the district. So that's why it's not only difficult to find the teachers, but also to bring the kids together to have the bilingual instruction. So we do is we provide ESL services.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Chidgey, I have one question. Did you have an additional question? How do these students perform when they're tested regularly with the others?
They usually do pretty well.
Okay.
I cannot give you exact numbers, but but that's something that information that we can gather. But they usually do pretty well. In fact, we had last year we had a student at Larkspur Elementary who was a Vietnamese child who was in the dual language program.
Mm-hmm.
So that kid is in the dual language program now at Eisenhower, and he's trilingual. He's studying Spanish and English
Wonderful.
at Ike and has a Vietnamese at home.
I would think they catch on very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Great.
they usually do very well.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Any additional questions?
Madam Chair, I
Yes,
guess
sir.
you might have answered my question right at the end when she said they were speaking Vietnamese at home. That was my question. How many of the students, do you have any idea how many of the students actually where English is being spoken in the home?
I don't think I can answer that question, accurately. I would have to investigate and go and, get families in that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have an emotion?
I move that the request for an exception to the bilingual program be approved as submitted.
Thank you, Mrs. Wolf.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Grona. Additional comments, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Next item, thank you. And this is Mrs. Hawkins as well.
2, possible action regarding request for waiver for the English as a second language program.
Mrs. Hawkins.
Thank you. Terry Chidgey will also make this presentation.
Mrs. Chidgey.
The ELL department must also annually request an ESL waiver by November 1st of each year. Every district that does not have the appropriately certified teachers to serve limited English proficient students must request from the Commissioner of Education a waiver of the certification requirements for teachers who will provide ESL instruction. As part of our comprehensive plan to provide LEP students with ESL services at their home campus, the district currently has teachers who will be completing their ESL certification requirements during the school year. TEA requires us to provide a list by November 1st of all the teachers who will be completing their ESL certification requirements during the school year. It is recommended that the request for waiver for the English as a Second Language program be approved as submitted. And again, Alicia Alvarez Calderon is here to answer questions.
Any questions? Thank you, Mrs. Chidgey.
I have a quick question.
Yes, please.
This is a lot of names.
Yeah.
I think that's impressive. So all of these students, just to be clear, all of these teachers, just to be clear, are going to have their certification by the end of this year, school year?
By the end of this year, they will have to test. I mean, I can't guarantee that they're going to get their certification.
Well, I'm
but
sure they'll be awesome.
Yeah, but and we have been providing a lot of support to the teachers, and so we have really a lot more than that list of people that have been getting their certification.
Yeah, that's great. I'm impressed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is this a normal trend, right? These numbers larger, smaller than prior years?
Well,
What do you think?
our population is growing.
Yeah.
We have more and more ELLs, and therefore we have more kids to service. And if they don't go into the bilingual program, they need to be serviced with an ESL program, especially at, middle school and high school. And so a lot of those teachers, and there are from middle school, and we have a lot of teachers at the elementary level as well. But we do need more and more ESL certified teachers at our campuses.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I move the request for waiver for the ESL program be approved as submitted.
Thank you, Mrs. Wolf. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Perkins. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Thank you both very much. Next item.
3, possible action regarding targeted improvement plans for Almost Elementary and Ed White Middle School.
Mrs. Hawkins.
Thank you once again. For this presentation, Colleen Borman, our Executive Director for Curriculum Compliance, will kick it off. She'll hand it over to Eric Wicker, and we have 3 principals with us and a service provider to support the presentation.
Okay. Good evening.
Mr. Wicker's going to be doing the presentation tonight. He's the Director for Federal Programs. Mr. Wicker has worked eye to eye, knee to knee, and heart to heart with each one of these campuses. On behalf of the principals and all the staff that are here, he's been a big part of the process, along with what all the staff and the principals have done. But turn it over to Mr. Wicker.
Thank you. Thank you for providing me the opportunity to share with you the work that has been going on at West Avenue Elementary, Almost Elementary, and Ed White Middle School. Beginning in the 2013-2014 school year with the introduction of the new accountability system, the state of Texas mandates that any district with campuses that are required to engage in the Texas Accountability and Intervention System hold a public meeting and seek board approval for their intervention plans. The new accountability measures student achievement of campuses and districts. The new accountability system of 4 performance indexes was introduced and includes a broad set of measures that provides a comprehensive evaluation of the entire campus. Index 1 measures student achievement. Index 2 measures student progress. Index 3 measures closing the performance gap. And Index 4 measures post-secondary readiness. The 2013-2014 accountability year was the first year that the elementary and middle school campuses were rated on index number 4. Based on the 2012-2013 accountability results, NEISD had 2 campuses, West Avenue Elementary School and Ed White Middle School, rated improvement required. Both of these campuses failed to meet the state standard score in Index 3. Both campuses engaged in the Texas Accountability Intervention System, were monitored by a professional service provider, assigned a district coordinator of school improvement, and received continual support from the Division of Instruction and Technology Services. Based on the 2013-2014 accountability results, NEISD has 3 campuses identified with the TASE process. With me tonight are the 3 principals from these schools: Victor Saldana, principal of West Avenue Elementary; Philip Carney, the principal of Ed White Middle School; and Gayla Booth, the new principal at Almost Elementary. I am happy to report that Dr. Gotardi received notice that West Avenue Elementary was eligible to be released from the requirements of the TASE process. Ed White Middle School was rated Met Standard and is now identified as a formally improvement required campus under the TASE process. Almost Elementary School received a rating of improvement required. Almost was rated improvement required by not meeting the state standard in Index 4. Both campuses are engaged in the Texas Accountability and Intervention System, are monitored by a professional service provider, assigned a district coordinator of school improvement, and received continual support from the Division of Instruction and Technology Services. In the next set of slides, I will review the performances of each of these campuses. Under the 2013-2014 accountability rating, West Avenue received an accountability rating of Met Standard. West Avenue exceeded or met the state standard on each of the 4 accountability indexes. In addition to meeting each of these indexes, West Avenue also met 100% of their system's safeguards. Because West Avenue achieved both of these standards, they are no longer required to be monitored through the Texas Accountability Intervention System. They will continue to receive support and monitoring through the Division of Instruction and Technology Services. At this time, I'd like to recognize the principal of West Avenue, Victor Saldana. We are very proud of the work that Mr. Saldana has been doing at West Avenue. It is clear that his leadership and commitment have made a difference at West Avenue. Under the 2013-2014 accountability rating, Ed White received an accountability rating of Met Standard. Ed White exceeded the state standard on each of the 4 accountability indexes. In addition to meeting each of the indexes, Ed White received 4 campus distinctions. They met 81% of their required system safeguards. It is only because Ed White did not meet 100% of their system safeguards they will continue to be monitored through the Texas Accountability Intervention System for 1 additional year and continue to receive support and monitoring through the Division of Instruction and Technology Services. Once again, we are very proud of the achievement of Ed White Middle School, meeting all 4 indexes and receiving 4 campus distinctions. We'd like to thank Mr. Carney for his dedication and leadership. I'd like to take this opportunity to highlight one of the 4 distinctions earned by Ed White Middle School. As you can see from this chart, Ed White was tied for the top spot in the top 25% in school student progress distinction, meaning that Ed White achieved the top quartile, the top 25% of performance on Index 2 student progress in relation to their campus comparison group. Congratulations. Under the 2013-2014 accountability rating, Almost Elementary received an accountability rating of improvement required. Almost was rated improvement required because they failed to meet the state target score of 12 in Index 4. Almost earned a score of 11 in Index 4. They met 79% of their required system safeguards. Because Almost received a rating of improvement required, they will be monitored through the Texas Accountability Intervention System, be assigned a professional service provider, be assigned a district coordinator for school improvement, and receive support and monitoring through the Division of Instruction and Technology Services. I would like to recognize the new principal of Almost at this time, Ms. Gayla Booth. We know that Ms. Booth's previous success at her previous school make her the right person to ensure success at Almost. Both Almost and Ed White have engaged in the Texas Accountability Intervention System as required by the Texas Education Code 39106. I have been assigned as the district coordinator for school improvement to work with both campus principals and their campus leadership teams in their continuous improvement process. The district is required to contract the professional service provider who ensures all campus documentation is reported to the Texas Center for District and School Improvement and the Texas Education Agency. Our district has entered into a contract with Margaret Gorsica. Ms. Gorsica worked with our campuses last year, and we found her to be a valuable asset to our team. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Ms. Gorsica. Thank you for being with us tonight. The campus principals, the campus leadership teams, the professional service provider, and I have been working through the continual improvement process to create a targeted improvement plan. The plan created for Almost Elementary is focused on increasing the number of students scoring at a post-secondary level or final level 2 or above to meet the target score for Index 4. Ed White's targeted improvement plan was created to focus on their system safeguards that were not met. In addition to the PowerPoint you're viewing, each of you has a targeted improvement plan workbook from each campus that was created and needs your approval. Once the targeted improvement plan is approved, I will submit it to TEA. The Texas Accountability Intervention System requires the targeted improvement plan be monitored and adjusted each quarter based on a thorough data analysis to ensure student success. At this time, the principals or myself can answer any questions you have. And then I'm requesting the board vote to approve the target improvement plans as presented for both campuses.
And Mrs. Brejnahan, if I
Yes,
may.
yes, ma'am.
I believe we have almost faculty here in support of the new principal, and I'd like to recognize
Oh,
them.
yeah, absolutely.
They're very determined to turn this around. If you all would please stand.
We're happy to recognize them. We're glad they're here. Do we have questions for Mr. Wicker or any of the principals?
I just wanted to say how impressed I was with the detail that goes into what y'all are working towards and what the district is doing, and it was really incredible to read. That was a lot of reading, to read to read all that, but it was really great. It made me feel that our babies are going to be okay. So that was pretty great. So thank you.
Mr. Wicker, I do have a question or two. And I think the first thing, I agree with what Mrs. Huey said, your needs assessment and your analysis was very comprehensive. And it took some time to as a non-educator, to understand a lot of the language. But I noticed that for Almost Elementary, so maybe the principal can address this, that you talked about organizational health. And I was a little bit surprised when I read that the overall teacher attendance was 96.1. And student attendance was 95.7, and from a layman's standpoint, that seems pretty good. But that's addressed as an issue, which I appreciated the
campus goals.
the candid nature of this data analysis.
And that's really what the data analysis asks us to do, is ask the campuses to do as a team, is to really get down to the root causes of why things may not be
Right.
working the way we want them. And the goal at Almost was 97% for attendance for teachers and students. And so since they didn't reach that, that was one of the things we wanted to address. And I know that Mrs. Booth and her staff have really been working towards all of those goals. And they really took a look at all those pieces. Coming in as a new principal, Mrs. Booth jumped right in and really wanted to look at all the pieces, to the whole puzzle, to make sure that they were moving not just the students but the staff in the right direction. And when you walk that campus, you really get a feeling that they're definitely headed in the right direction.
And you've got just a gajillion percentages, and I'm sure that's all based on data,
It's all- yes, it's all-
baseline data?
Yeah, it's all the data.
And where you need to be?
And where we need to be, yes, ma'am. When we look at, it's all based on the state standards, and of course, unfortunately, they don't set those state standards for you when the school year starts, and so we kind of are aiming for a
Understood.
target that we don't know exists. And we assume that the last couple years, we've gone up 5 points in overall passing in Index 1, so we kind of shoot for there, and then the last few years, it's been the top 5th percentile in Index 2 and 3, and so so it's kind of a game.
Understood.
But unfortunately, they're kids, and so we want to do the best for them, and so we
course.
really want to be where we can be so that we not just meet them, but we exceed them.
The other thing I noticed is most of your interventions seem to be breakouts in small groups. And how's that going? Because we've been through one quarter.
Ms. McKinney,
Anyone?
answer that?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'll address that question. Most of our interventions are based on small groups. And if we look at the data, the beginning of the year data, and the interventions that we have in place now, we're seeing growth.
Yeah.
In reading and writing and science, we're still working on math. There are new TEKs, and so it's going to take quite a bit of work to get the students adjusted to the new TEKs. But the small groups, it is really benefiting the children.
Thank you. I think my last question, and maybe it's still almost, is something called a quintile, which to me is like you take the group and divide by 5, but I don't know if that's right.
It is. Part of the in-school improvement, one of the pieces we work with all of our campuses is with urban kinesics work. And it's really looking at all data and all students and breaking them into quintiles to see where your data falls.
Okay.
And that way, too, as you kind of look at growth for kids, we want kids to be in the highest percentile, quintile 5, and so we can watch kids as they move through the quintiles. So as we kind of chart their data, as the campuses do, and as we do, as we reflect on the data as we do our analysis, we look at where kids are moving through the quintiles to see if they're moving up the quintiles or jumping thresholds. And so really it's through urban kinesics work and school improvement that a lot of campuses, not just these 3 campuses, are using that work and that language.
Okay, yeah, I had never heard it before. It was interesting. And then I think my last question is probably for Mr. Carney with his data analysis summary, where you state that 82% of all your students are identified as economically disadvantaged, and from a layman's standpoint, that seems like a very, well, it is a high percentage, and it saddens me, but it's the reality. So give us just a quick overview of how you address that kind of population and what kind of interventions you find to be particularly successful.
Good evening, and that's a great question. There are a lot of challenges that come along with such a high percentage of students that are identified as low socioeconomic. One of the other factors that we dealt with, for example, last year was about a 68% student mobility rate.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the first thing that we do is really build a very solid team, and I appreciate my team from being here as well tonight because they work very hard. Secondly, it's to empower teachers and to empower students to really have a strong climate that supports the students, because they're not just going to be able to show up and just learn math or reading or writing. The teachers have to truly make that connection with the students. They have to have the relationship with the student to be able to wade through some of the baggage that students bring to the campus. And so through establishing that caring, learning, open environment with the students, then it's about really breaking through and being able to meet the students where they are. And for a lot of our teachers and the support that they get from our leadership team, from school improvement, it's just critical for them to be able to meet the students where they are, because many of our students have a lot of gaps. But it's a lot of hard work, a lot of caring, a lot of resiliency, but at the end of the day, we try to come together and help each of our students be successful.
Well, and we just want all of you to know that this entire board concurs with what you have to say, and every last student, every last one is important to us. And so we appreciate all that all of you do in your staff, because that's why we're here. And that's what will move our state forward. Additional questions or
Yeah, I
comments?
just think it's really important to note that the naysayers about public school, the people who label us as failures, need to be hearing the things that are being said and cared about and cared for here today. The group of teachers that's here, thank you so much. That means so much. We don't see your children or your school as a failure. We see the challenge, but we don't see the failure. We're not going to show these children the door because they didn't meet 1 point on a standard that is nebulous at best. So thank you to all of you for what you do to bring our children the best that you possibly can.
And
Dr.
Mrs.
Gotthard?
Brejnahan,
Yes.
Mr. Carney, do you have staff here also? I apologize. I did not recognize them sooner, and I really apologize.
We can recognize them now.
Please. If the Ed White staff would please stand.
Well, and we try to do everything we can to support all of you, your teachers, staff, principals. It's really important that we all pull together. So thank you very much for being here and for this presentation. And I was very impressed with your data analysis and some of your methods. We use that at the Health Science Center quite a bit. Same methods.
It's a good system.
And we've done all right.
It's been a good, it's shown to work clearly
It
at West
works.
Avenue. It worked. Victor and his team last year really, as well as Mr. Carney, but lived and breathed it. And we really moved the document, and clearly they moved completely out of it. So it works. It's work. I don't think any of them up here would say it isn't, but it works for kids, and that's the good thing.
You know, we were at our conference. There were two economists that came to speak to us. One was from New York City, Columbia University. He was just brilliant, a much older man and really engaging. And I just couldn't understand that. And the second one was from the Federal Reserve Bank in Dallas. And they kept talking about the state of the economy of Texas. And we've all discussed it, but the numbers are phenomenal. I mean, we are just the top, and things are so incredible. We're number one in everything. But what I cannot reconcile, and I still don't have an answer, is that our economically disadvantaged kids that number keeps increasing. So there is not a core. I don't see the movement of success trickling to our population. I don't understand it. We've had a few theories. We've had some very engaging conversations among us. But I'm hoping that that trend hits at some point, because it can only help these kids and their families. But the economic outlook is unbelievable. Let's see what happens. Yeah, Dr. Gotardi.
Ms. President, and board members, I would just add to a well-done presentation tonight that not many teachers, not many counselors, not many administrators get a lot of sleep when they find out that their campus has an improvement required label put on their campus. And I can tell you that we are extremely proud of the hard work of these administrators, these teachers, and these counselors for making a difference for the students in their schools. That's a tough challenge that they've been given over the last couple of years, and I can tell you, obviously Victor and Philip, Victor's definitely on his way, Philip's already on his way, and I guarantee you, Mrs. Booth will be there this time next year. There's no question in my mind, based on the support of the faculty and the teachers and counselors that we have here tonight, along with our instructional division, the support that they offer, as well as I would tell you that there's instructional support all the way across the board here in all 4 divisions to make sure that students are successful at all levels. And you're absolutely right. It is becoming tougher and tougher to make that happen at every one of our schools. That's not going to change. That will continue to be a challenge in this school district. And I can tell you that hardworking people are going to make it happen.
Well,
thank you.
I agree with you, and we're so fortunate for that. One more thing that Mrs. Hawkins and I went to a presentation. I thought this was really, it's very disheartening, and I hope it changes, but we went to go see Steve Murdoch, who is was the U.S. Census Bureau chief under Bush and our state demographer, and I think he's incredible. Just the way he looks at data and the way he analyzes things. But he said to us that in West Texas, it's growing so phenomenally fast that they can't keep teachers. They keep hiring teachers because there's such a need. But unfortunately, the teachers cannot afford monthly rent because the rent has become so prohibitively expensive. And if they can even find a place, and what a chasm that is created in some of these, they talked about Midland, I think. So it was real. There's lots of challenges and lots of things happening that affect our public schools. And I just hope that, policymakers understand that and see it. Well, so thank you again. Do I have, having said all that, sorry. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the targeted improvement plans for Almus Elementary and Ed White Middle School as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Groen. A second?
Second.
Mrs. Wolf, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Thank you very much. Next item?
D, Campus Administration and Human Resources. 1, possible action regarding the naming of the JROTC building at Churchill High School.
Dr. Newman.
President Bresnahan, members of the board, Dr. Gotardi, executive staff. I would like to ask Mr. Justin Oxley, the principal of Churchill High School, to address this agenda item.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Gotardi, executive staff, and guests. Thank you. I'd like to introduce Chief Gonzalez, the head instructor for a JROTC program at Churchill High School. He'll be running the presentation that you see behind you. He also created the presentation that you see behind you.
Great.
NEISD has a long-standing tradition of naming buildings for many of our nation's finest leaders. In keeping with this tradition and by acknowledging the central role played by General George C. Marshall in the establishment of the JROTC curriculum, we recommend the following naming convention. General George C. Marshall Leadership Center of Excellence. General George C. Marshall maintained a unique relationship with his civilian leadership. He is widely acknowledged as being one of the most influential leaders of the 21st century. His unique relationship with the other great leaders of his time is perhaps best described by Winston Churchill, our school's namesake. We recommend the following inscription be placed near the above-mentioned name in the foyer of the building. The inscription reads, "There are a few men whose qualities of mind and character have impressed me so deeply as those of General Marshall. He is a great American, but he is more than that. In war, he was as wise and understanding in counsel as he was resolute in action. In peace, he was the architect who planned the restoration of our embattled European economy and, at the same time, labored tirelessly to establish a system of Western defense. He has also fought victoriously against defeatism, discouragement, and disillusions. Succeeding generations must not be allowed to forget his achievements and his example." Winston Churchill. The budgetary considerations is the cost of the plaque at the Winston Churchill JROTC building that would be posted, as well as letters on the outside of the building. On behalf of the Churchill campus, we would request that the Board of Trustees approve the naming of the Churchill High School JROTC building as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Oxley. Do we have questions?
I just want to say this was one of the easiest decisions on naming that I can recall. This was so great because I did more research. I loved the quote. I thought it was just wonderful. And I knew some about Marshall, but you get old, you forget.
Yes.
So I did a little research, and I had truly forgotten what an incredible man he was in our nation's history. And in one conversation, oh my gosh, Nobel Prize, that should count for something. So I don't know who came up with this thought, this idea, whoever. Thank you so much. I think that's such a great legacy to give our students to follow in the path of this man. So thank you.
Agreed. So who came up with the idea?
That would be
Wonderful. Yeah. And is that the Marshall Plan was named after him? Okay, that's what I thought. I couldn't remember either. It's terrible.
Good answer, sir.
Yeah, great. Any additional comments or questions? Thank you very much. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the naming of the JRTC building as presented.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Perkins. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Thank you both so much for this
Thank you.
presentation. It was well done. Yeah. Next item.
2, possible action regarding approval of PDOS appraisers.
Dr. Newman?
President Bresnahan, members of the board, Dr. Gotardi, executive staff, we are asking that you approve the 4 listed appraisers as certified PDAS appraisers.
Thank you, Dr. Newman. Any questions for Dr. Newman? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the administrators as certified PDOS appraisers.
Thank you, Mrs. Grona. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. White. Additional questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries. Next item.
3, possible action regarding class size reduction waiver.
Dr. Newman?
President Bresnahan, I would like to ask Mr. Joel Trevino, our Executive Director for Human Resources, to come to the podium to address this agenda item.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Gotardi, executive staff, and distinguished guests. Today, we bring forward an action item. If you remember, about 30 years ago, there was a state bill that required a maximum student-teacher ratio of 22:1 for grades kindergarten through 4th grade. Therefore,
30 years?
almost 30
Holy
years.
smokes.
I remember that.
Wow. Me too.
Well,
But I thought it was-
the provisions and requirements of the class size waivers required by the Texas Education Code stipulates that each school district do a survey of classrooms that are over the required 22:1 student-teacher ratio. The survey indicates that any classes must submit a class size waiver request to the state of Texas.
Yeah.
This request must have your approval. We, at this point, we had that survey early last week on Monday, and we have 24 campuses with 95 classrooms with enrollments in excess of the 22-to-1 ratio. All of the campuses received a rating of Med Standard. A financial hardship experienced by any ISD has resulted basically in our request of class size waivers for all of these campuses.
But did you know that we don't need any money thrown at us any longer? Have you been reading that in the papers? Sorry.
We should have had more cut and none replaced, according to, yeah.
Yeah.
I do have a question.
Yes, any questions for Mr. Trevino?
How does this, I mean, these numbers seem so high to me, but I know a sister district of ours, it's even worse. They're having to ask for even higher waivers. How does this relate to where we've been going in the past with these waivers?
Excellent question. We have decreased the number of campuses by 33%. Last year, we had 36 campuses. This year, we have 24. The number of classrooms decreased by 54%.
Oh, good.
Last year, we had 207 classrooms. This year, we have 95.
Oh, good.
That's good to hear.
And that is through the hard work of Dr. Gotardi and executive staff.
We're
I
glad they
think it's
work hard, too.
everybody, yes. Do you anticipate, though, this staying fairly stable? Do you think we'll be having to see another request? for
I
waiver?
believe so.
I remember that we usually do it twice.
That's right.
We will, from here on out, we just do periodic updates to the state, and based on last year's experience and the previous year also, it kind of stays steady and even dipped a little bit.
Additional questions?
Yes, ma'am. Most of these classrooms are just one or two students over the 22-to-1, right?
That is correct, sir. One or two students, and there's sometimes one or two classrooms, sometimes just one classroom per campus.
Right. Well, I would just like to make the observation that, you know, this is very important to get it done with the waiver. Otherwise, you know, it could be an economic situation to split up a class that has 23 to 24 students and then have to hire another teacher. So I think it's very important to do it this way, and because sometime before the end of the semester, somebody may drop, move or whatever, and it'd be back down. So I think it's a very economical situation too, that makes it necessary to do what we are doing here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Additional questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Trevino.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve the class size reduction waiver?
I move that we approve the class size reduction waiver.
Thank you, Mrs. Grona.
Second.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
White. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Thank you. Next item.
E, consent. 1, business services. A, resolution approving sources of instruction relating to investment responsibilities. B, broker-dealer authorization. C, bid items. D, $50,000 purchases. 2, construction. A, easements for drainage, streets, utilities, and various service agreements to support construction of the various 2011 bond program projects. B, professional services contracts, construction contracts, and related contract amendments supporting the 2007 and 2011 bond programs, design, and construction requirements. 3, minutes from August and September 2014. 4, end of consent.
Thank you, Mrs. Huey. Do I have any board members wishing to remove an item from the consent agenda? Mrs. Huey.
Yes, E1C, bid items, just for a quick question.
Okay, E1C.
Bid items.
And I would like to pull 2E2B. Any others?
I'm sorry, that was 2B?
E2B,
Okay.
yes.
The professional.
I need to pull
Yes, ma'am?
E2A,
Okay.
but I only have a couple things in there that I need to pull that I can't vote on.
Okay. So that, could you say E?
2A.
E2A, got it. Any others? So first I need to approve the consent agenda with the exception of E1E, E2A, and E2B. E1C, sorry.
E1C.
E1C, E2A and E2B.
So moved.
Thanks, I don't want to have to repeat that. Mrs. Perkins and Mrs. Grona, okay. Okay, I think I've got that correct. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with these exceptions?
Bridget and Shannon.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
all those in
I'll
favor, I'm
second.
sorry.
Yeah, she was the second.
Yeah, second.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, sorry for the confusion there. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. So why don't we go ahead and start with Mrs. Huey and her item?
All right, this was just a quick question on the bid items under district-wide custom shirts. There's one of the vendors, everyone's showing as a discount of minus something or something, and there's one with a plus 40% actually. And I'm pretty certain this has been asked and answered before, but I wanted to just double-check my
Yes, ma'am. The way we receive the bids, they can bid it as retail cost, or they can bid it as their own cost. When you see the minus, you would take like a $5 shirt, and if it's a 10% discount, it'd be 50 cents. On those are their costs, so when you go to their catalog and they show a $2 cost, it's a 40% markup after the $2, so the cost of the shirt would be $2.80. So they can bid either as a discount or as a markup.
markup from cost.
From cost, yes, ma'am.
Not
So,
from list.
right, not from list. It's
One
not,
month
so
out.
a lot of these, the minus ones are the retail, the ones that are saying, hey, it's going to be $5 shirt, but since you're dealing with us, we'll give you a 20% discount or whatever. And it's a catalog bid, so our schools or our departments can look through here and see which ones they would like to work with.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve item E1C, bid items.
Second. Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. Next item, Mrs. Wolf, would you like to ask your question?
Actually, I just can't vote on
She's-
Eisenhower Middle School or White Middle School.
Okay.
So I don't know how you'd like
So
to
you-
proceed
you-
with that. They have to do with utilities, and I work for the water company.
Understood. So you need to recuse yourself from the vote?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So yeah.
I can just abstain.
Okay, so I'll go to mine, and then we can make the motion. E2B, and that has to do with professional service contracts, construction contracts, and related contract amendments. I suppose this question goes to Mr. Villarreal?
Depends on the question.
Well, my question is, when I look at the matrix, I just want to make sure that I understand. You've got an original contract value, then we have the current contract value, which is, does that mean we've already voted on the current contract value and now we're voting on the amendment?
This is going to go to Mr. Clary. And
That'd be
probably
Mr.
Clary,
Sullivan.
Mr. Sullivan, okay.
He likes to make sense for us,
I think you've answered this before, but I can't recall.
Madam President?
Yes, sir.
Yes, that's correct. You're voting on the contract amendment column.
So we've already voted on the column that precedes that.
That's correct.
Okay. And when there's large disparities, I know you've answered that question for me before, but I just don't remember. For example, like this geotechnical and material testing professional services, in which we start out at 10, we move up to 117, and then the amendment asks for 4. And you've answered the question. It's the way you've regrouped some of these contracts, but could you clarify that for me?
Sure. In the case of the geotech
Yeah.
and material testing contracts, and excuse me for my congestion.
No, that's okay.
The original contract would have been the geotechnical contract, which is initiated early on in the design phase of the project. And then usually about a year plus later, when the project's ready to go into construction, we get a proposal from the same vendor that provided the geotechnical services, to then provide during construction the material testing services. During the course of the construction, which could last anywhere from 18 months to 3 years, we may want to do some additional testing, which in this case, the $4,400 represents an air barrier test at Coker Elementary School for the air barrier system that is the envelope that keeps the water out from penetrating the masonry block walls.
Okay.
That wasn't in the original proposal from the consultant, and we specifically asked that it be added, since that service is something that we want to monitor.
Okay, and my last question is, when it's an '07 bond item, how does that work? I know you have your contingency account, but I kind of thought that maybe that was expired.
Can you
So,
give me?
so for example, you've got David Lee Tex Hill Middle School 2007 bond, Pape Dawson Civil Engineering Site Development Design. You've got a new value of $413,000. I'm just wondering how that works with monies from an '07 bond.
That should actually list 2011 bond.
Okay. Okay,
That's-
got it.
that's my
Yeah, that
mistake.
was a little surprised to see that. So that probably stands for all the David Lee Textile Middle School. Should it be 2011? That's what I thought.
Yes, ma'am, that should be
Okay.
2011.
Yeah.
My mistake.
No, that's fine. I'm glad you clarified it for me. Okay, so I would like to make a motion. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Those
Thank
were
you.
my questions. I hope I do this right, Sandy. The motion to accept consent with E2A, E2B, and noting that Mrs. Wolf has to recuse from these items. Is that an appropriate motion?
From A.
Just from A.
Yes. We're doing A and B together because we haven't, but she's recusing from A.
So we need to do A by itself.
So then we have to do A by itself?
Just do A and then B.
She's only, so we need two motions? Okay, so let's start over.
I move that we approve 2A with Mrs. Wolf recusing from the vote.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Perkins. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, 6-0 then. One recusal. I mean, 6-1. 601, right. Mhm. Okay, so then I'll make the second motion to accept consent with E2B. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Shannon. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Yep.
Good job.
Thank you. That was a little confusing. Marie, thanks for your notes. Mhm. Next item.
11, reports. A, financial statement, review of expenditures. B, quarterly investment report as of September 30, 2014. C, annual investment report as of June 30, 2014.
Okay, and these reports have all been provided to you prior to this meeting. Next item.
12, matters from the floor.
Okay, so we need to. Thank you, Mrs. Huey. Regarding matters from the floor, the trustees welcome comments from the members of the public during this time of the meeting. Generally, board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting, although members may request further information or a future agenda item on a matter raised during public comment. As explained fully in the board written procedures for this time, the matters from the floor portion is a limited public forum. Accordingly, speakers may present on a topic related to district business for up to 5 minutes, but are not permitted to make, 1, personal complaints about an individual staff or board member that should be raised using the district's grievance policies, 2, a personnel action, 3, a student disciplinary matter, 4, a complaint about a particular student, and 5, pending litigation. Any person who persists in speaking on these topics after being directed not to do so will lose the remainder of their time to speak and may lose their privilege of addressing the board at future meetings. We also welcome written comments at any time, either through email at board@neisd.net or by mail care of the superintendent's office at 8961 Tesoro Drive, 6th floor, San Antonio, Texas, 78217. Mrs. Huey.
Selena Valdez.
Ms. Valdez?
Good evening, Madam President.
Good evening.
Members of the board, Dr. Gotardi, executive staff, and guests. My name is Selena Valdez. I'm the president of the Northeast Education Association. My address is 9033 Arrow Street, 78216. This school year has gotten off to a very good start. There have been some lingering issues of teachers losing their planning periods, but we are happy to say that most administrators immediately dealt with the issues when brought to their attention. Last June, when we met with Dr. Gotardi, he mentioned that student discipline was an issue that was crossing his desk more frequently. Northeast Education Association has been on many campuses talking to all educators and school employees, as well as talking to community organizations, trying to narrow in on issues surrounding student discipline. In the near future, we will be sharing the results of these efforts. Northeast Education Association's membership is growing, and this year we have started a new campaign to bridge our gap between school employees and community. We are setting up booths at different community events within Northeast ISD. We are handing out brochures, giving information about our organization, and offering tips to help your child be successful in school, pencils for the students, and keychains that say, "I love my NEISD educator," for parents. We look forward to showcasing all these wonderful ideas and projects produced by our teachers in the Northeast Education Association. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Gonzalez.
President Hand, board members, executive staff, and guests, thank you for giving me the opportunity to present tonight on behalf of 7 to 10 family members, a couple of which are here tonight from the Big Spring subdivision. The purpose for attending tonight's meeting is to provide you visibility to the very real impact of the pending decision to make Bush Middle School a 100% feeder into Reagan High School. On the surface, this decision makes a lot of sense. But when you dig deeper, you'll discover the actual impact to residents that live in the nearby neighborhoods, specifically Village on the Glen, Cactus Bluff, and Village in the Hills. Residents whose children attend Bush and also have established roots in Johnson High School. I'm talking about families that already have a teenager in attendance at Johnson, with younger siblings that attend nearby schools, or some families who specifically made a conscious decision to purchase a home and settle down in one of these neighborhoods because they have a desire for their children to eventually attend Johnson. Or families that would end up having a split home with parents having to transport their teenagers to both Johnson and Reagan. These 3 neighborhoods were zoned Reagan prior to Johnson being built 7 years ago, which made a lot of sense given their location at Evans and 281. After Johnson was built, residents from these neighborhoods were given the option to attend Reagan, which several of the families chose to do. However, those that did not are now actively engaged in Johnson, to include younger siblings who now wish to attend the high school they've come to know and love. These families have established communities of friendship and worship. They volunteer and participate in Johnson's programs and look forward to their children, especially the younger ones, having the option to graduate from the same school, Johnson High School, as their elder siblings. As stated before, the decision to make Bush Middle School a 100% feeder into Reagan makes a lot of sense. However, just like the families of these neighborhoods were given an option to attend Reagan after Johnson was built, we'd like to ask for the same consideration to have an option now that the rezoning is being reconsidered. Quite frankly, looking back, these neighborhoods probably never should have been rezoned from Reagan to Johnson in the first place. This ping pong effect on the residents of these neighborhoods is what created this situation. A situation these families didn't create, but would like to work with NEISD to help resolve. We recognize that it would be impossible to institute a broad sweeping, never-ending grandfathering clause. Instead, we'd like to ask NEISD to carefully consider each situation, as families have already submitted letters to the board, and work with them to develop a viable win-win solution. Why we ask for a viable solution is that the standard written reply to our letters states that we can always opt to apply for school of choice. But we also know that Johnson High School has not admitted anyone who has applied for school of choice for the past 2 years due to the number of students enrolled. The development of homes and apartments in the Johnson area only means that this trend of denying school of choice will more than likely continue. Perhaps consider actually granting school of choice into one of the middle schools that feed into Johnson. Or give these families an option to declare Johnson as their school of choice, much like what was done for those families who had an option to select Reagan. when the neighborhoods were rezoned. Or simply grandfather those families that have a student already at Johnson with younger siblings that do and will attend Bush. In all these cases, consider establishing these as a one-time exception for the specific families from these neighborhoods that are caught up in this transition, with the understanding that the new residents from these neighborhoods will knowingly be zoned to Reagan by way of attending Bush Middle School. These residents recognize that they would have to provide for their own transportation to and from school should they be granted a way to eventually attend Johnson. What these residents don't want to have to do and should not be expected to do is uproot their families and bear an incredible expense to move to the other side of 281, when they would have done it, this way in the first place, had they known these neighborhoods would be rezoned back to Reagan by way of attending Bush. I thank you for your time in consideration of this matter. We know you continually work for the best interests of the entire NEISD community, and we ask in so doing that you please look into this situation and help develop a win-win solution for these families and the larger community. Thank you.
Glenn Bartholomew.
Madam President,
Yes,
Board,
sir.
Dr. Guattardi, staff, and guests. My name is Glenn Bartholomew, MacArthur, class of 63. This is my sister, Jeannie Bartholomew Adams, class of 66. My older sister, Joyce Bartholomew Hebert, class of 60. And my youngest sister, class of 67, Margie Bartholomew Watson, became a grandmother this morning, so she couldn't be here. Most of you, I say most of you, several of you know who I am and know my father. My father became a member of the MacArthur Booster Club in 1958, and when season tickets were available for MacArthur, they became he and my mother, Evelyn Bartholomew, became season ticket holders. My dad is still an active member in the Booster Club and goes to all the games. I'd like to express our appreciation to Northeast Independent School District and to MacArthur for all the kindnesses and courtesies that have been rendered to my family, my mom and dad, over the period of years. My mom passed away in 2004. She was in a wheelchair. And my dad had to deal with that accessibility to sports events that they dearly loved. When they were going to Cumberlander, way back when, before she, well, actually early 2000, and when she became ridden in the wheelchair, they had to park at the baseball field and go against the bus traffic to get to the gate. And what we're requesting is a handicap ramp at the handicap parking area from the west side parking lot down to the gate level. I will let my sister say her little bit of to do, and then we'll go from there.
This isn't just about my mom and my dad. We've been to football games where I have watched families pick their loved ones up out of a wheelchair to carry them up the stairs while someone else carried the wheelchair up the steps. I've stopped and sat with someone waiting to be picked up because we've been told that handicap can be let off at the gate and then picked up. That's a 15 to 20-minute wait at a football game. I've stood there with my dad. I've stood there with other handicapped people that had no one with them. To leave someone that's handicapped for that length of time is just ludicrous. It's dangerous. Anything could happen. A year ago, there was a bomb threat at Blossom. The only way my dad could get out of the stadium was for someone to pick him up and carry him. We've spoken on this for well over 10 years. I talked to Dr. Middleton about it, and there has been nothing done. And we feel very strongly, this is probably our dad's last year. He's going to be 97, and it's, unless he goes into a wheelchair, he will not be able to make games anymore. So this isn't about him entirely. It's about handicapped people. And I feel very strongly that there are options out there. We were at Northside. They have a wonderful switchback that's aluminum, doesn't have the cost of all of the concrete cement to do a switchback to come down. I know there's a cost involved, but I also know that there are improvements and things being done at the athletic facilities, the new gates with the electronic signs and everything. Surely we can find some money to help the handicapped so that they can continue to get to these games and enjoy them. Thank you.
Going back to the bomb scare that night, Debbie Marvin, who's the administrative assistant at MacArthur, it was a traffic jam in the parking lot. It was much longer than what the 20 minutes normal. And Debbie found my dad down there. I could have picked him up and carried him. He wouldn't stand for that. For any of you who know my dad, he would not have stood for his son to have to pick him up and carry him up the stairs. So at his request, I left him down there and went to get the car. I got a call from Debbie saying, "Your dad's down here." I said, "No, I can't get to him." And she said, "Well, turn around and come back to the steps, and I've got 4 people who are going to carry him up the steps for you." And that's the way we got him up to the parking lot area. Several years ago, I talked to one of the people in construction at the Northeast District and presented the problem to him. Somebody I went to school with. He graduated in '64, and he got back with me and he said, so I know that the district's aware of the problem, because he said that a civil engineering firm had done a study and a cost analysis and said that it was going to cost $145,000 to do a ramp, handicap ramp. I told him that I would personally do it for 1/3 that. Never heard back from him. I've done some research. The aluminum handicap ramp, FOB, Cumberlander Stadium, is $22,000. Now, it's a rector set, so it would require assembly, and it would also require excavation and concrete to create a pad to set it on, and a retaining wall. That should cost probably another $20,000. So that falls in line with the 1/3 that I told him I'd do it for. We would like to know that there's going to be some kind of resolve. 10 years, over 10 years is a long enough period of time, and obviously it's known to the district that it is an issue because the civil engineering firm was contracted. Please let us know. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And just to be clear, will Joyce had signed up to speak also? Will she be speaking? No? Okay. All right, just want to make sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Tom Cummins? Patsy Esterline?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
My able-bodied assistant. Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Gotardi, executive staff, and guests. My name is Patsy Esterline, and I'm the president of the Northeast American Federation of Teachers. Do we still have to do the address?
Go ahead.
I live at 6025 Meadow Sunrise, San Antonio, Texas, 78244. On previous occasions, Northeast AFT has spoken with you regarding bullying, both among students and adults. You have addressed the issue of bullying among students, and improvement has been noted. Tonight, AFT is requesting that you address the issue of workplace bullying. In the past, we have shown you examples of bullying by an administrator and/or supervisor to an employee. It is usually in the form of the administrator and/or supervisor exploiting the imbalance of power through written or verbal expression. Although it can be a physical threat through gestures, body movement, or voice. Oftentimes, it can be the imposition of unreasonable demands or expectations. And bullying within the district is a lot more common than one would think. Some other examples include unwarranted or invalid criticism, blame without factual justification, different treatment than the rest of the work group, and excessive monitoring. Houston ISD recently adopted a policy addressing workplace bullying. It states, quote, "The district considers workplace bullying to be unacceptable and will not tolerate it under any circumstances. Workplace bullying is defined as engaging in written or verbal expression, expression through electronic means or physical conduct that occurs in the workplace that, one, has the effect or will have the effect of physically harming another employee, damaging the employee's property, or placing the employee in reasonable fear of harm to the employee's person or of damage to the employee's property. Two, is sufficiently severe, persistent, and pervasive that the action or threat creates an intimidating, threatening, or abusive work environment for the employee. Three, exploits an imbalance of power between the employee perpetrator and the employee victim through written or verbal expression or physical conduct. Four, interferes with the victim's employment or substantially disrupts the operation of the work location. Workplace bullying does not include the legitimate exercise of employee management, including task assignment, employee coaching, and work-related discipline. Allegations of workplace bullying shall be handled in accordance with DIA 3 regulation, end quote. In Barbara Colaroso's book, The Bullied, and the Bystander, she describes the bullying circle. In that circle are the ones known as the possible defenders. They dislike the bullying, think they ought to help, but don't. Please don't take that role. When you took steps to ensure that students would have a learning environment that is stress-free and optimal for learning, the district took a major step forward. Now is the time to take a step forward for the employees to have a secure working environment. Thank you.
Austin Flynn.
Good evening. I would like to talk about an issue with the way some teaching styles are at Roosevelt High School. I'm in the data magnet program, and according to Article 7 in the Texas State Constitution, education is supposed to be free and appropriate. I don't feel that it's appropriate when some teachers use online resources as the complete sole course instead of actually teaching themselves. I understand the use of online resources for extra support, but not the full class. I mean, if I'm gonna be, why am I enrolled in a public class if I'm just gonna go home and use an online resource? So another thing is I thought that I was doing well in the class, in this math class, calculus to be specific, and I had a good average A through the class up until the 6 weeks progress report, where 20 grades were put in. You know, one of those things where all these grades are just thrown in. Average went down below failing, very bad. And I went and talked to the teacher and asked for help, and I was told that I needed to go use the online resources that he provided and to figure it out myself. So I tried to get a teacher change, but he is the only teacher that teaches my course. And I just want to make sure that we stop allowing teachers to use online resources for the sole class. I would like that for the teacher to actually teach the material and also give the students help. I went in after school and asked for to reconsider some grades, and he basically said, well, I mean, I told you to go do the online stuff. I can't really, I mean, watch the videos online. And I said, I don't understand them. And he's like, well, try watching them again or Googling something. And so at that point, I'm stuck. And I talked to the administrative staff over at Data, and they basically said that I needed to talk to the teacher, which I told them I had already done, and that I was stuck in the class. I mean, they were threatening me with a withdrawal failure because I was saying that this is an elective course for me. I have my 4 math credits already to graduate, and I wanted to switch to another math class, but they're threatening me with a withdrawal failure. So I'm stuck in a course where I'm not being taught anything. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn.
And that's all.
Thank you, Mrs. Huey. Next item.
13, board members' request for items to be placed on next month's agenda.
Do I have a board member who wishes to have an item placed on next month's agenda? Ms. Huey?
I'd like to get a report on the handicap access at Blossom Athletic Center.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So we need next item.
14, discussion and possible action regarding board member requests for reports for the administration. So my motion is to request a report for the handicap access at Blossom Athletic.
Thank you, Mrs. Huey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Wheat, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Next item,
15, adjournment.
and the time is 9:27. Thank you very much.